I wrote Understanding Gender Dysphoria to introduce to the evangelical Christian community the concept of being transgender and a person's gender identity and the dysphoria that can be associated with that. I think Emerging Gender Identities updates the Christian community on what's been going on in the last 5 years, where there's been really remarkable shifts in the cultural conversation and the professional conversation. Of course, that talks about not just the transgender experience, but what are these kind of emerging gender identities, such as being pangender or bigender or agender or gender creative or gender expansive, and just the increased number of ways and variations that young people are exposed to both language and categories, and then find that these words end up capturing something of their own experience. I think all of us come to this conversation with the language that we're familiar with around sex and gender, and so when someone uses different language in different categories, rather than react to that, I think it's better to understand how that language has made sense to that person, why they're drawn to it. Doesn't mean that by being conversant you're agreeing with all of the language and categories, but you're a little bit more attuned to how that functions for them and what it means for them as you love them well. This is not an act of willful disobedience to experience gender in the way that a loved one does. And so I want the book to position people in ministry, to position parents, to have a more nuanced and measured response. I think for people navigating this space, I hope in some ways that they see themselves in these pages, that they realize that they're not alone. There's other people who have different experiences of their gender identity, and there may be some opportunities here to reflect a little bit on how do they think about this as a Christian, and what does it mean to respond to painful experiences that we have. I think the topic of gender identity has been the most complex topic that I've ever written about and conducted research around. It's been challenging in terms of the theological questions and the spiritual questions that people have, that I have, and that pales in comparison to the challenge of the loved ones we're talking about, the challenges that they're facing in the middle of all this. But at the level of shepherding people, I really want pastors to be equipped to walk alongside people. So even when you teach norms around sex and gender, understand how some of that might be heard by people who are navigating this space, being thoughtful, nuanced, and nimble about how you want to respond to people on a case-by-case basis. I want to put you in the best position to minister more effectively in the years to come.